you can have the most amazing, transformative, life-changing service. But if you don't know how to convey the value of that service to your ideal client, they will not buy. And therefore you're denying them the opportunity to get those results that they are craving and longing for because you're not willing to get your messaging together.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade thinking beer brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klink proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey there, welcome to episode 73 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm really excited for today's episode. Today's episode, we're talking about one of my favorite things. We're talking copywriting. And no, I don't mean copyrights, the legal stuff. I mean writing copy. One of the things I've learned over the last year or so in my business is that copywriting is probably the most important skill that every single online marketer needs to master. The reality is that unless you can write copy that connects with your potential customer, spurs them to take action, and ultimately makes them decide to buy from you, you don't have a business. It's not something you can outsource. It's something that I originally thought, I can hire a copywriter. Well, guess what? If you don't know your message, if you don't already have this kind of dialed in yourself, a copywriter can't help you. This is one of those skills that you have to get kind of a grounding in and get to the point that you at least are proficient in it. Now, over the last year, I've worked a lot on my copy and I tend to think I'm pretty good. In fact, my weekly emails, I tend to get emails from people, including copywriters, sometimes telling me that my copy is quite good. So I feel like I've kind of gotten to the point that I'm proficient, but I'm still working at it. I'm still trying to take lessons and I'm still trying to build that skill. And so I wanted to bring on a guest who could help you to really refine your copy. Now, I've already had a copywriter on before, but we talked about some general concepts. And in this lesson, in this episode, I wanted to have a very specific conversation. So I brought my friend, Sara Anna Powers. I just call her Anna, but her brand is Sara Anna Powers. And I brought her on, and she's an online business mentor and expert copywriter. Like me, she is a recovering lawyer. After working in civil litigation for 8 years, she left her law practice and now spends her days helping people pursue their powerful purpose by building impactful businesses online. She coaches private clients, leads a mastermind, and runs an online program called Magnetic Messaging. She also hosts the Faith Forward Online Business Podcast, which is available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And she can be found at saraannapowers.com and on social media, Sara Anna Powers generally. She also is someone who is very established as a copywriter and works at this and helps people. And so in today's episode, she gives a true masterclass. Now we talk about, copywriting generally, but then she gives a framework. A very powerful framework of things that you need to look at for every piece of copy you write. It's a bunch of C's that she goes through to really help you understand how to create powerful copy that is going to move people to take action. So that is the purpose of today's episode, and it is a fantastic interview. This is one you're going to want to listen to and probably listen to again because there's so much value that she packs in. So without further ado, here's my interview of Anna Powers. Anna, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so excited to be here, Bobby. I've been looking forward to this interview all week long.
By the way, I have to tell you, and I'm going to say this, and then you're going to have to tell the story behind it.
Okay.
Every time I talk to you, I think of Cardi B.
I'm so glad you said that. All right. The backstory to that is, you know how Cardi B, like in all her raps, she's like, Cardi B. And I always thought, like, how much fun would it be to have that level of confidence? But there's something about your name, Bobby, that just seems to flow into that format. So whenever I see Bobby, I always want to say, Bobby Clink.
And she told me this, and I was like, Cardi who now?
Oh, my goodness.
I've heard the name Cardi B, but I don't think I would recognize a Cardi B song if I heard it. So.
And so then I had to say, I like diamonds, I like dollars, I like.
And still I was like, no, I'm not getting it.
Still not getting it.
So,
just Google her. Just Google her.
Oh, no, I know of Cardi B. I just don't actually know her. So now I love your story because you're a lawyer who has actually made the transition completely out to copywriting.
Yes.
And I want to know why you made that transition. Other than the fact that being a lawyer isn't a lot of fun.
So to make a long story medium, I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I saw Claire Huxtable on the Cosby Show. You know, she was a
lawyer. I don't even remember that.
He was a lawyer. Cliff was a doctor. One of them had gone to Princeton. I was like, oh my gosh, they have such a great life. You know, they have a nice place. They're laughing and they're accomplishing things, but then they have a family life too. And I also love to speak, and I've always loved reading and writing. And I know that's a huge part. You know, I knew that was a huge part of law. So I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I was literally like 7, 8, 9 years old. And I remember when I was getting ready to go to law school that these older men who were friends with my parents were like, ooh, you want to go to law school? Trust us. Like, you don't want to do that. It's really miserable. And Bobby, I thought they were just trying to keep a woman down. I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. You're just trying to keep me out. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make partner in like 5 years. And what I realized in hindsight was, oh my goodness, those people really cared about me. and they had watched me grow up, and they could see that I was creative, and they knew, like, not that lawyers don't have hearts, but it's a tough career. You know, I was a litigator for 8 years, and the nature of litigation is you are hired to be an advocate for your client, and it is your job to argue with the other side. And it just, you know, as I got into it, it was very clear, actually quite quickly, that it was not a great long-term path for me, especially that first year and a half I was doing insurance defense, and it was research and writing all the time. And I love people, and I love talking with people and interacting with people. And I literally went from my house by myself to the office for 12 hours a day, shut into a beautiful office, nice big windows, but literally like looking at case law and writing all day long, and then going home by myself. And I was just like, oh my gosh, get me some human interaction.
You know, it is so funny because your story and my story, so similar. I thought out of law school, I wanted to be an appellate lawyer, which meant I did exactly what you're talking about. I went to my office, I sat there, I stared at a computer, I read, I wrote, I thought. And that doesn't work for me either. So and the fighting with people, I try to make people understand this, and they just can't. I'm like, literally, I once had to have a fight, had to fly from Washington, D.C. down to Florida to fight, to get in front of a judge, to get the other side to give me legible copies of a document. And by the way, legible, I mean, they had smeared it on the photocopy because it was dirty while they were copying. And I had to go fight and argue to a judge about that kind of thing.
Discovery disputes, right? Those are the worst, because you're just like for those people who aren't litigators, you know, that's part of the legal process is you get to ask your questions and get the answers, and it's meant to help the case along. But we as humans in our like obnoxious nature have turned it into just an excuse to be awful to each other. And, you know, it got near the end, Bobby, and that's actually how I knew it was time to fully transition. I had gone part-time. So I was I was blessed. The last firm I worked with was family owned, like super entrepreneurial, spirited people, creative people. And that was a really, really great environment. And they were very supportive as I grew my business, even knowing that this meant, you know, I might eventually make an exit. So I was very blessed in that regard. But I remember I had gone to working 3 days a week in the law office and 2 days a week in my coaching and copywriting practice. And first of all, when I did that, I went from consistent 5-figure months, which even while I was practicing, I built the business to consistent 5-figure months. When I went part-time, I then it was all of a sudden every month was 20K plus. And I was like, okay, like this probably means there's more opportunity. But it was the energy that was different, like the fighting, like nitpicky energy of law versus the, hey, everything's 100% possible 100% of the time, abundance mentality. Like law is like, if here's the pie and I need my slice. And if I don't get my slice, if you get a bigger slice, I get a smaller slice. And in coaching, it's just like, oh, let's just make another pie, like pie for everybody. And I remember when I knew I had to go, I was trying to draft discovery responses, and it was like my brain and my body were just frozen. It was like I could no longer even, it's a pretty simple task in the legal field, but it was like God had like turned off that part of my brain and it was time to move on.
Yeah, listeners, what you need to understand is these discovery responses, what you end up doing is you end up fighting about stupid stuff. It has nothing to do with the actual merits of the case. It's you're fighting over what you're going to give the other side and what you're going to do to search for stuff. And you get in these fights, and I just, I'm drained by them. I got into law because I like the intellectual part of it, but I couldn't do the appellate because I need to talk to people. But the problem is, I also, I picked a profession where I fight with people all day, every day. And I said, this just isn't for me. And so I'm glad you made the transition out. We'll get out of talking about the legal stuff.
Okay.
There's enough of that. But so now you're a copywriter and you have some other stuff as well, but we're going to talk about copywriting.
Yes.
And, I've had a copywriter on before, but I want you to talk about, what is copywriting basically?
Yeah. Okay. So copywriting are your words that sell. It is your marketing messaging. And it really is like any words that you're using to sell your services, from your websites, what your website says, to any funnel emails that you're writing, to your Facebook ad, the words on your Facebook ad, the words on your landing page, even to if you have a brick and mortar and you've got like flyers or direct mail inserts that you're putting in like a local newspaper, anything that has words on it. And I call it, like, if any of your listeners used to watch Mad Men, which I thought was such a fascinating show, I say it's like Mad Men without the alcoholism and affairs. That's what we're doing.
But actually, I want to dig a little bit deeper, and I want to make a point for listeners. Because you're in business, right? This is not a hobby. This is not, you being friends. Everything you write should be part of leading to a sale in one way or another. So everything you write should be about copywriting. It should be about conversions. It should be about thinking through, how am I going to move a person from wherever they are forward in the journey to buy from me? And copywriting is an important part of that. And I got to tell people, quite honestly, copywriting, I believe, other than getting your mind right, is the most important skill we all need as entrepreneurs. You're not going to succeed if you can't write copy.
Totally. And what I always tell people is you can have the most amazing, transformative, life-changing service, but if you don't know how to convey the value of that service to your ideal client, they will not buy. And therefore you're denying them the opportunity to get those results that they are craving and longing for, because you're not willing to get your messaging together.
Yeah. And I just tell people this because I honestly believe that when I really started focusing on copy, a lot of things started to shift for me. There were other things going on, but that is a huge piece of it. So,
and you do it so well. I'm on your email list. So if any of your listeners aren't on your email list, you guys need to hop on, because I read Bobby's emails and I'm like, oh, this is so good. You do a great job of it.
Well, it makes me feel good to hear you say that. I've had multiple copywriters email me and say they now have a Bobby swipe file, which I find funny.
I love it.
But again, what I'll tell you is, for me, and part of this was, that I started being authentic, which actually I think leads to a very good point. What you're going to talk about today, and the lesson you're going to give my listeners, is you call it the 6 C's to go from connection to conversion.
Yes.
And what are those 6 C's?
Yeah, so I'm going to walk you through each one of them in more detail, but just to give you the broad overview of where we're going, you want to take your connections and turn them into conversions. And so to make it easy for you to remember, I have the 6C framework, which starts with connection. It moves into clarity, We're going to talk about how to create contrast, which is a piece that a lot of people miss, but that is absolutely necessary. You're going to learn how to get concise. My biggest struggle, P.S.
Mine too.
Yeah. Then we're going to do calls to action. And then we're going to talk about the importance of consistency. So you add all those things together and you really want to have that framework. Like if you literally just wrote those 6 C's on a piece of paper and kept it beside you and kind of use it as just a run through before you send out an email, before you put a sales page live, did I do these 6 things? You will see dramatic improvements in your conversions.
Okay, so I love that you make it simple. I love that you have a framework. I love that they all start with the same letter.
I love alliteration. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, so I love all that. And by the way, listeners, I gave her a great idea.
He really did, yeah.
Before we started recording, she may turn it into the 7 C's, but sometimes I have ideas. But I want to start with the first one, connection.
Yes.
What is connection and how do you build connection in your writing?
Perfect. Okay, I love this question. Connection is about actually caring and giving a flip about what your ideal clients are struggling with. And this is how you create that authenticity and that realness that sells, because people care about how you make them feel, right? Like they care about how you're going to help them move forward. They really don't care about you except for to the extent that you're going to help them solve a problem or get them a solution. And so when you can connect with people and you can do it genuinely and authentically, it will resonate with them, and that you will build that know, like, trust that we always hear. You got to have the know, like, trust. The best way to do it is to really connect. And this is the part where people take a step back and sometimes aren't willing to do the real work. And, sometimes those people, they just got to fall away, because you cannot succeed in business without being willing to do the real work, as we both know. But when I encourage you to connect with people, I literally mean you need to pick up the phone and you need to talk to people. What?
Oof, that's hard. Talk to people. I don't want to do that.
And
I don't have to talk to people. Come on.
And I know probably some of the listeners are like, oh, well, this Anna chick and Bobby, like they already said they like to talk to people. This is not fair. I'm an introvert. You're going to have to get over that. I'm just going to give you tough love.
and I'm going to give everybody tough love here. I technically am an introvert. I'm on the line, but technically I'm an introvert. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse. That's an excuse, not a reason.
Well, and here's the reason, because here's the reason you need to get out of your shell, get out of your comfort zone. First of all, magic happens when we're outside of our comfort zone. That's where we grow. But to be responsible, ethical business owners, we need to make sure that what we're offering actually is getting people the help and the results that they need. And oftentimes we think we know what people need from us or what they want from us, but we don't actually, unless we really ask them. So what I teach is just kind of a series of questions. And in a program that I run, I go through these like in great detail and give you scripts and things like that. But it is questions like that you would ask when you're interviewing either your ideal clients or past clients that you've worked with. Just when I started, I didn't have an email list. I literally just went through my contacts, like my friends in my phone, and thought, of all these people that I know, there's got to be 5 of them that might fit into the profile of someone that I could help with this thing that I'm doing. And so you ask questions like, what's your biggest struggle in this area? Whatever you're helping them with. And what have you tried to overcome this struggle? And how long has this thing been hindering your quality of life? And then you get into the deeper questions that are more important than just the surface questions. The questions like, how does it make you feel that you haven't been able to tackle this issue? And then the killer question, like, what if nothing changes in another 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, And frankly, it's when a coach asked me that question when I was in the law practice that I was like, oh no, that's not happening. I'm not staying here another 5 years. And that prompted me to hire my first coach. And actually it was 3.5 years, I think, after I hired my first coach that I went full time. So, these questions are powerful, but what you want to do is either get permission to record these interviews, or, and you could do that through like a Zoom video call or a Skype call, but just, get someone's permission. And then I'm sure, Bobby, you might have a template for them to
I'm not going to that. You don't need a template. Just ask for permission. What I tell you to do, get on the Zoom, hit record and say, hey, I'm recording. Do I have your permission? And they say yes. And then you got
it. And then you go. Right. And if for some reason, you can't get their permission, you just have a notepad and a pen, and you write down the actual words that they say when you're asking them these emotional questions, and you start to notice themes. So this is why I encourage people to interview at least 5 people for any new program, product offering, because you will find current themes. And so an example I give is I did this for my own program, even though it was uncomfortable for me too. I like talking to people, but just doing like free market research interviews when you're a business owner, and your time is like your most valuable asset. Like it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But what I found was, there was a whole aspect of the program I was putting together that I had totally not even thought about, which was the amount of time that it takes people to write copy. Because I had all these frameworks and templates built out, but because writing is not a struggle for me, it's a skill set that I'm great at. I didn't realize how much people struggled with how much time it takes to write the copy. Yeah. And so doing the market research helped me know what to put into the program that would speak to the need that people have. And that's why it's so important.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, listeners, for just about every one of you, time is going to be one of the things. Whatever problem you solve for almost everybody, that's an issue. But do this work. But I'm actually going to add something else that Anna's not going to tell you need to do.
Oh.
After you do those interviews, you need to just go be a fly on the wall where your ideal customer lives, spends time, et cetera. And I've told people this so many times. My podcast app is full of podcasts that literally say they are talking to women. Why am I listening to it? Because I look at my stats and 85 to 90% of my customers and people in my Facebook group are women. And so I'm not a woman. That should be obvious.
You're not.
And so, I understand that I need to be listening to where, my customer is and hearing the words that the people like Jenna Kutcher are saying in her podcast, because she obviously knows the audience. And you can learn a lot from, listening and being in Facebook groups and doing those things. And so that will add to your connection on top of the work. But also, let me be clear, you have to get on the phone. I agree with Anna. You can't do this as a fly on the wall only. That will help you, but you've got to actually get on the phone.
Well, and the phone is so critical, because when things aren't scripted and people aren't like surveys are great. And that's another powerful tool. If you have an email list, you can send out a survey, but there's something about catching people on the fly. And that can really give you gold that you wouldn't get if someone's like filling out a survey. So I love your point about hang out where your people hang out. And one thing, if any of your listeners have a free Facebook group that they run, we do ask questions before people come into. I have a group called Purpose Driven Women, and it's not a copy specific group, but a lot of people there need help with copy. And I asked 2 of the questions I asked are, how long have you had your business and what's your biggest struggle in business? Super simple. But we get a lot of copy specific struggles, and we keep a spreadsheet. So I always have all those answers. I mean, there's more than 1,000 people in that group at this point. All that data that is just, it's like gold for me. When I'm creating a program, I can look and see where are people struggling and how does it make them feel and what are the words that they're using. And you want to use the exact words. Like if someone says that they're stressed about something, don't assume that means the same thing as frustrated. Like those may feel like the same word to you, but they're not to your customer.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just tell you, listeners, I learned this a long time ago. And when I started surveying people, one of the phrases that I heard people talk about over and over again was the unknown unknowns. And so that's a wonderful phrase to put in, to my, because that's with entrepreneurs, that's with the legal stuff. It's, they don't even know what they don't know. And so those were a couple different ways they said it. And so I started using that and that resonated, but you start to pick up phrases like that. And then you'll also hear like overwhelm is a phrase I hear a ton when I'm listening to people. And obviously with the legal stuff that is something. So that's connection. Is there anything else we should talk about with connection before we move on to clarity?
I think we covered connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
We connected with each other on connection. So
we got it.
so now we move on to clarity. Wait. Come on. I don't have to be clear in my writing, do I?
If you want to make sales, yeah, you do.
Okay. So go through clarity.
Okay, cool. So clarity, we're going to hit from a couple different angles. You need to be clear about who you are. You need to be clear about who you serve, what you help them with, and why the heck that is important. And it's that last piece that so many people miss. And I'm going to give you an example from my own business. So compare/contrast these two ways that I could talk about what I do. Hey, I'm Anna Powers, and I help online business owners create magnetic messaging. Ta-da! You're like, oh, okay, cool. So she helps online business owners and she helps them create magnetic messaging. You might be thinking, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds pretty professional. Maybe she's legit. Yeah. What if I say then, hey, I'm Anna Powers, and I help online business owners create magnetic messaging so that they can attract more quality leads and make more consistent sales.
Yeah.
Was that more powerful?
Yeah, it's that clause. And again, unless what you do is something that obviously, well, of course I want that. Got to have that. And, I definitely understand that because what I do is not something that people want. So I'm constantly working on that clause. So how do you come up with that?
Yeah, well, it's just, and I want to reiterate, it's just so it's our responsibility as the business owner and as the mentor to do that work to make that clear for our ideal clients. It is not their fault that they cannot pick up on, what's inside our hearts and minds if we can't freaking find the words to say it. So it can be a process. It's like that great Marie Forleo quote, clarity comes from engagement. So you're probably going to have many iterations of what I call it your electric elevator pitch. But the framework is very simple. So the framework is basically I am blank, your name, and I help and get really specific about who you help. So I wouldn't say like I help women, I help motivated women. I help motivated professional women, and then it's usually do, make, or create. What do you help them do or make or create? And then the key phrase, so that they can. And that last part, you're going to ask in your interviews, like, what is it why do you want to fix this thing? Like, what is that going to help you do? Because let's say you were like a weight loss coach. If your target market are college kids who've like been drinking too much alcohol and have like beer guts, and now they just want to look hot for their spring break trip, it's their so that they can phrase is very different than if your target market is like people in their late 50s who are starting to have grandkids and they're 30 pounds overweight, and it's hard for them to get on the floor, get up and down, and like play with their grandkids and really have the energy that they want to have. So it matters so much that you're speaking to the people that you want to help, and you're making it clear why it's important, the deeper why behind the just losing the weight. Like, why does that really matter? And even you can keep going like layer after layer, 7 layers deep in the why. Okay, why? And why is that important? Why is that important? Really getting to the heart of it.
I wanted to jump up and down during that answer, Anna, because you actually demonstrated one of the most important things that so many of my listeners and so many entrepreneurs resist. And that is why you need to niche down or niche down, whichever you prefer.
Yes.
I prefer niche, but I
like niche too.
I interviewed someone earlier this week who, has a rhyme with niche. And so it was using that. But anyway, so when you heard what Anna said there, if you're selling a weight loss program, you can't simultaneously talk to that college age guy who's trying to get in shape for spring break, grandfather or grandmother to be. You just can't.
Right.
Because you could talk about the benefits, but the benefits are, aren't going to be, losing weight, blah, blah, blah. No, the benefit is you can actually get down on the floor and play with your granddaughter or your grandson. And that obviously, if you're saying that, you can't make that same statement for the other
20-year-old, we hope. Although the world is crazy these days.
That'd be really crazy. But no, I mean, I just think it's important because so many people, and I've told this story a couple of times. I was in a group where someone said, well, I want to offer courses on, to help people with technology. And I said, okay, well, who's your ICA? Well, it's someone between 25 and 65. I said, no, it's not. I was like, those are so different. So I love that you said that. And so that's what you mean by clarity, is getting clear on who you serve, how you help them, and what the ultimate benefit is and why it matters.
Yeah. I mean, the key part there is why it matters to them. Again, going back to like, people do not care about me. They don't care about you. I mean, our families, of course, like our but in business, right, people care about you for how you can help them, how you can support them, how you can create a change for them. And I want to your point about the riches are in the niches.
Yeah. It doesn't sound right there.
This is the thing. Do not be afraid to niche down. Because I think most people's resistance to being afraid is that they really don't want to cut off possible clients and customers. And they do know they can help. If you know how to help people lose weight, like maybe you can help both a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old, but you cannot market to them simultaneously. And that's what we're saying. We're not saying you can't serve them, but your ideal dream people will come to you as you are being completely authentically you, and focusing on choosing that ideal client will allow a lot of people who would not be your dream clients to know quickly, hey, she's not for me or he's not for me. And there will be people who don't fall into your specific ideal client profile, but they will resonate with you and they will contact you anyway.
Yep.
And the example I give for that is one of my top one-on-one mentoring clients is a man in his late 50s who is very successful in corporate and is building his own personal brand business. And, I don't market to men. I mean, my branding is pretty feminine, and now my courses are open to men, but I have a women's mastermind, so he listened to my podcast and he reached out to me and said, hey, I really resonate with what you're saying. Do you ever work with men? Yeah. So don't be afraid that you're going to shut the door. The people who are your right fit, they will still find you.
Yeah. Well, and I want to not dig in. I want to kind of tease out something you said there, which is the perfect lesson for people. You will know when you have niched far enough, when you can tell one message that will fit that group. When you can actually message and market to them with one message, that's when you've gotten far enough. And so that might, depending on what you offer, like female versus, man versus woman might not matter. It might matter.
That's true.
Depending on what you're doing. Age might not matter depending on what your product is. I mean, I think at some point age will matter. I mean, there's different things, but it's all about being able to get into a conversation with people. So I wanted to tease that out because you said it, and I wanted to make sure people heard that. So that's clarity. I think we should move on to contrast now.
Contrast is my favorite. I know I shouldn't play favorites, but I love it so much.
So what is contrast?
Okay, so to sell effectively, you need to create the contrast between the pain, the hurt, the frustration that your client is in currently, pre your services, and the joy and the lightness and the possibility and the hope and the vibrancy that they can be in post your services. And then your service, your program, your product, what have you, is the bridge. So I try to make this as clear as possible. And I try to paint like word images so you can remember this stuff when you walk away from the podcast. But I call it taking your client from his world of pain, like, just where he's stuck and so unhappy, to your paradise of possibility. So you got to take him from the world of pain to the paradise of possibility. You have to do both. And this is where I see a lot of people mess up. And because a lot of people are really good at one or the other. They either are really great at talking about the pain and they're like, everything sucks in your life right now. Like it's really awful and you're super miserable and you hate your job and you hate your boss and you don't make enough money and you get sick and you can't even afford to go to the doctor. Oh my gosh. And then they're like, and do you want to buy my thing? And people are like, no, I just want to go sit into a corner and cry now. You just made me feel awful. Thanks a lot. bozo. You know?
By the way, I've got a wording that you might like: the heaven and the hell. That's how I've heard this referred to before. You have to tell people about that, be able to talk about the hell they're in, the heaven they want to get to, and the bridge. Your product is the bridge.
Yes.
I love that concept.
That's it. The other way that people could swing to the other side of the pendulum, and they're so nice and they just want to help people. So they don't want to talk about the pain. Like, that would be mean. That would be rude. So let's just talk about this amazing paradise of possibility, this heaven that you could get to. And let's talk about all the awesome things that you're going to have, when you've experienced this program that I have to offer. But here's the thing that they forget. We numb out. Humans, we numb ourselves out to try to convince ourselves that things aren't really as bad as they are. Like, we gain our 20 pounds and our clothes, like, we just keep trying to zip up those jeans. And they even make the little extender thing now, so as long as you wear a shirt that covers it, you don't even have to, and you just try to convince yourself, I'm still a size 8. Maybe. No, but we have to actually tell people, like, you know what, like, you can't get into those jeans anymore without your extender. And that extender just snapped the other day. And you couldn't wear them at all, and this is the reality. And they go with your favorite sweater, and it's screwing up your whole outfit, and really, this is a lighthearted example, right? But You have to push on the pain. And the analogy I give is like, when you go to the dentist, if you go to the dentist and say, like, I have a toothache, I think I might have a cavity, the dentist isn't just like, great, let's fill your cavity. He's like, okay, cool. Sit down in this chair, and I'm going to take this metal thing. I'm going to poke on it. And then usually you're like, oh my gosh, like, what? It really hurts. But what it helps you do is see, oh, the problem is actually even bigger than I knew. And what's my alternative? So I can go ahead and take care of this now, and I can get the $50 filling that takes 30 minutes, or I can choose to not deal with this. That's an option. He's not going to force me to deal with this. But probably it's just going to get worse. I'm going to end up needing a root canal. I'm going to end up needing a crown. It's going to cost $2,000, and it's going to take me out for 3 hours from work, and it's going to be a horrific, awful experience like I've been through. And I even like the dentist, but root canals are awful. So showing someone how bad their situation is, and then showing them how it could be, how much better it could be, and taking them into their vision, but then amplifying their vision and elevating their vision, taking them even a step beyond. That is where you get the sale. And so the piece about amplifying and elevating the vision, the example that I give there is, let's say I'm working with a potential business coaching client who just says, I just want my business to make enough money that I could take like a vacation to Europe, cash flow a vacation to Europe, because I've always wanted to go. I've never been. I would say, awesome. And how much fun would it be to ride business class to Europe, where you get like the fancy food and you can lay back and you can get there rested. And maybe you might want to have like a little shopping spree on the Champs-Elysees and, stay at a nice hotel instead of like a hostel. And so I'm going to help them. And they may not have ever even thought that was possible. Like, they may be in their heads, well, the best I could ever do is just to get to Paris. I could get to Paris like in business class, really? And that's, again, our job as the mentors and the leaders, is to open up people's minds to what truly is possible, because we know it's possible, but we have to help people see it sometimes.
Okay. Now, I don't know if this will fit for a lot of my listeners, but I think some of them it will. I've got to ask you this question. I have trouble with the hell, the pain, or whatever it is, because largely my clients aren't in pain. They could be in pain if they don't deal with it, if things happen. In that context, how do you deal with painting that picture and do it without feeling like you're being a fearmonger?
Well, you do it honestly, but we know from the legal perspective, you actually need to figure out, again, the why behind the why. So maybe these people don't really care about if they get sued. Maybe they think, oh, well, I could just, worst case scenario, I could just dissolve the business and start over. But if you start saying, actually, no, worst case scenario is you've left yourself unprotected. Your personal assets are at risk. Yeah. Your home is at risk. Your spouse will not have a home to live in. Your children will not be able to go to the private school that they go to. You will wipe out their college fund to deal with this lawsuit that you are leaving yourself exposed to because you're lacking a $200 legal form.
Right.
Like, so understanding again what the pain point is, because probably a lot business owners oftentimes, we're willing to take risks, and we take calculated risks, but we think through, well, worst case scenario, this could happen and I'll fold and I'll start over and rebuild. But if the worst case scenario, which is actually much worse than that, it's not just involving you, it is involving your family, your spouse, your children, that could catch people's attention.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. And I do want to put a pin in that because, our friend James Wedmore found that for me, that for prophylactic type of services, like, where you're offering something to protect someone if something happens, often the best messaging, they're not going to relate to a bad thing happening to them, but extend it to a family, to, the people in their life, it will resonate. And, made the point of like health insurance often is now marketed not about them, but about it won't ruin your finances for your family. So I think that's a wonderful perspective. And I'm glad you brought it out the way you did, because it led to that.
And it's not about being mean. It's about being honest. I mean, you're not doing that to be like a sneaky snake oil salesman. It's that you really do know, like, that is a real risk. And we pray that it doesn't happen to someone, but it's so easy for them to protect themselves, And I remember that conversation where James was bringing that out. And I think, if I recall, was it a Eugene Schwartz book?
It's the book from the 60s or 70s.
The book that cost like $500. But again, these are timeless principles.
Yeah.
These are principles that have I want to say it was a Eugene Schwartz book, but
I think it is.
I could be off on that. But like, these are principles that have been being used in the marketplace, in sales for decades, and more than a century at this point, by like the greats, the Eugene Schwartzes, the Gary Halberts. And it's because they work. And as my copywriting mentor, Ray Edwards, says, we get to use them for great good or for evil. And so that's on you as far as like being, ethical or unethical. That's that way of promoting your services. It works. It's your job to make sure you're using it responsibly and wisely.
Well, right. And I think the key to that is, if you have a product and a service that you believe in and you believe is valuable for people, you should not feel bad about convincing them to buy it.
In fact, the opposite. You should feel bad if you don't convince them to buy it.
Correct. Right. And again, I'll be clear. I'm never going to tell someone to go into the poorhouse, to not pay their mortgage or something like that to buy from me.
Right.
But, you have to be responsible there. We should move on, though, because the next C is one that, two lawyers talking should definitely think about. It's be concise.
Yeah, this is definitely the one that I struggle the most with. And it is important. And actually, Bobby, I first started to pick up this skill with my legal writing, because I would be given, and this, like, you have a brief, you have a page limit. And I would think, oh my gosh, 30 page limit. I can cram tons of case law and arguments into this document. And then I realized I entered actually for a federal court judge, and he was like, they have so much on their plate, so much to read. Like, they actually want you to just give your strongest arguments, give your heavy hitters, and keep it as quick and as clean as possible. And those are the arguments that win the day.
Yeah. I mean, in legal writing, I agree. I mean, I definitely have seen that. I used to make the analogy when I clerked for a judge. We would get a brief that would have, like, literally, I remember getting a brief that was like 25 pages and had 10 major discrete arguments. I said they must all be junk because, you shouldn't do that. You've got to pick your best and stick with it. And it's also about how you write. I mean, you need to consistently work at cutting words and just finding ways to cut words.
Yes. And so that really is the tip, is once you've done your draft, like, let yourself have free reign, let yourself, say all the ideas, but then go back through and see if you can cut it to like 50%. And I know that sounds extreme, and you probably won't be able to do it at first, but with practice, you'll get more and more succinct. And I can read back through things I've written and say, oh my gosh, like, that could have been a fourth of the number of words that I actually use. I just need to convey this one idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I do that on my emails now. I frequently like, no, I don't need that. No. And I just cut it. And, it's often in like with me in my storytelling, I'm like, okay, I need to cut that. They don't need that detail. It's things like dates. Nobody cares about a date in a story, that you're telling.
Right.
But sometimes you'll put it. So do that. And also I'll give you just a free writing tip. If you're trying to work on being concise, go through your writing and circle every time you have a passive voice verb.
Try just not to use those.
Well, right. But you circle those and you will find that, okay, let me put that in the active voice, and it will shorten your writing, make it punchier, make it more concise. And also adverbs and adjectives. Try to find something so you don't have to use them. You could find a better noun, a better word that actually already encompasses it, so you don't need to use those.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
So I learned that not from copywriting, but normal. So is that it for being concise?
We should keep that one concise. Yeah.
Okay, so next is call to action.
Yes.
Talk about call to action.
This one's super simple, but you just need to tell people what you want them to do. So oftentimes I see people sending out emails. I'm on a lot of people's email list, and they'll mention their program and they'll just hyperlink it. But they never say to people, click here for the full details of the program. Click here to enroll. Click here to watch the live stream. They're like, I'm doing a Facebook live stream, and they highlight and hyperlink Facebook live stream. But it's like, people already have so many choices to make. Please, please, please make it easy on people to understand how to buy from you, where to find more, where to get more information. So that one is totally not rocket science. It is super simple, but you need to actually have calls to action in your emails and on your site.
Yeah. And let me back up to one thing even before. So your notion that, yes, you should say click here. You should be very clear about what you're asking them to do. I see some people who will send emails that don't have any call to action at all.
Oh.
And I'm not saying you have to say download or join me or anything, but every email should have a call to action. It should be go out and do this. Or like I have one in my intro sequence that I literally ask people, hit reply and say, I commit. And that's all I ask.
Totally.
I'm not asking to do anything other than that, but every email you send should have something you're asking your readers to do.
100% agree. And that doesn't mean that you have to be selling a particular program every single day. Now, some copywriters would say, yeah, you need to send a daily sales email. I personally do not send a daily sales email. I see people who do it that it works for. I'm not at that point where that feels congruent to me. But what I do is I do have calls to action. So I might have done a free training on Facebook. I'll send out the replay and I'll ask them to click on that. Sometimes, Bobby, I just send out, like when Macklemore came out with his video for Glorious, where he like takes his grandmother around. I was like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing, awesome, uplifting video. Let me send that to my email list. It's just to make you smile. Recently, for whatever reason, that great classic popped into my head, and I thought, I must send this to my list.
Wait. Did you just refer to Hanson as great?
Classic. I think I said classic was the word. Perhaps I also used great, but that's a great song, Bobby.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, I'll give you that one. But yeah, and again, so I mean, I don't ask for sales except during promotion period. But every email I send has a call to action. Mm-hmm. Go listen to my podcast. They're already on my list. Go join this freebie that I've got. Go get it because it's useful. So I think you need to. The point of that is get people in the practice of doing something,
taking action.
Take action.
Yeah. And as far as where and how many calls to action, so like the general rule of thumb, ideally you would have 3 calls to action. If it's a longer email, you'd have one near the top, one kind of middle to the end of the body, and then always in the PS, because the PS is your most read section of your email after the subject line. But there are times that I do a shorter email and I might have one call to action in the body and one in the PS. That should be the same call to action. Please try not to have ask people to do 3 different things, because again, people have enough to do. Just give them one call to action, but you can put it multiple times in your message.
Yeah, I break that rule every once in a while, but
they're guidelines.
One email, one purpose is the general rule. But yeah, I think it's so hilarious that we have trained people read the PS, because that's where we're actually going to tell you everything you need to know in a very short thing. But That's great. Okay, so that's call to action. And then the last one I'm curious about, consistency.
Consistency. While contrast is my most favorite of the C's, I think consistency is the most important of the C's.
Okay.
Because you have to consistently communicate. And I'm going to hit this from two different angles. First angle is you need to be consistent with your communication. So with your copy, you need to actually, if you have an email list, like once a week minimum, you need to be messaging them. And it doesn't always have to be the same day, the same time. Like I feel like people get a little hung up on that. I have this concept in my own business. It's rigid flexibility. So there's going to be an email every week. It might be Monday, it might be Wednesday. I'm going to give myself that flexibility, but you will always see an email from me every week, and usually 2 or 3. I mean, that's how I'm committed to serving my audience. So you want to be consistently communicating, like regular communication. The second element of consistency is you need a solid and consistent message across all your copy. So you want to have one main overarching goal that your business serves, and that needs to come across in each thing that you write. And someone who gets your emails, they need to have the same tone as your website copy, and that needs to have the same tone as your Instagram and your Facebook. So it shouldn't be like all formal and flowery on your website, and then you go to your Instagram, it's like, yo, what up? It's like, who are you? I don't understand what's happened. Where am I? You just need a through line. So for my own business, it's pursue your powerful purpose. And even though I have 2 pretty distinct arms of my business, which is the done for you copywriting and also my coaching and mentoring and my courses and programs, both elements help people pursue their powerful purpose. I'm either teaching you how to do it for yourself, or for those like 7 and 8 figure brands, I'm doing it. I'm helping them do it by doing it for them, but it's still serving the same overarching message.
It's very bad that I always think of this. Things in my mind always go back to my legal training. And one of my favorite professors talked about, you have one core theory for a case.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You have to have your core message that goes through everything you say. And again, we could look at very specific things. Like I will see this. People have a Facebook ad that has one message. It goes to an opt-in page where you're like, wait, what? And it's very different. And it confuses people.
And sometimes that'll get your ads disapproved, because Facebook will check that. And if they don't really align, and that's something I talk about in my program, I give templates actually to help you keep those things very similar.
Yeah. And again, I'm just talking about if the headline of your opt-in page is, how to do X, well, you should probably have how to do X somewhere in your Facebook ad so that people know. It's the little things like that I will see mismatches where people don't get things right. So it's all consistency. And I was wondering, you hit both things I was thinking. 1, the consistent message, and 2, message consistently. So yes. I love it.
Great. Yeah.
And then, hey, what's number 7 that you're going to add thanks to me?
Yeah. So Bobby pointed out and then where's conversion? I'm like, oh my gosh, there could be 7 C's, and I'm a spiritual person and I love Jesus. And I think 7 is the number of completion. Like the world was created in 7 days. I'm like, this needs to be 7 C's. So when I launch next, just be watching. But basically the last one would be conversion. Yeah. And that is a beautiful thing, because when you convert someone, you are giving them the opportunity to work with you more closely and actually get the results that they really want. Yeah. And I was at a Michael Hyatt conference in January for his Best Year Ever program, and he said this phrase, and I don't know if he created it, but he's who I heard it from. When people pay, they pay attention. Yep. And I know it to be true in my own life. When I've gotten free access to someone's program, I might do a little bit of it and then I get distracted. And when I've paid, oh my goodness, there was one mentor I paid $40,000 to work with her for 6 months privately. There were a lot of things she asked me to do that were not convenient, that were very outside of my comfort zone, that had I paid her $5,000, which is no small chump change, but I promise you, at that stage in my business, if I had paid her $5,000, I wouldn't have done those things, because I would have been like, whatever, I don't have time. But I paid her $40,000, and so I was like, Anna, you'd be an idiot if you don't do everything she tells you to do. And because I did that, I made the $40,000 back in the first half of us working together, and then proceeded to, get a bigger return on my investment. But that's why we want to convert people. We want to sell to them so that they're in a safer container to get that personal interaction with us, that direct feedback. That's going to get them the best results.
Yeah. Okay. And so I love this. I love your framework. I love all of this. And this is basically what you teach in your course, Magnetic Messaging, right?
Yes, but much, much deeper. So we've just kind of skimmed the surface. And what I do in magnetic messaging is I really take you through each element of a piece of copy that someone who is an online, it's primarily for service-based business owners. It can help product-based businesses, but it's primarily for the service people. So consultants, coaches, mentors. And I take you through your website copy. I take you through how to create your email funnel, what the order of the email should be. I give you sample guides for, templates and swipe files, your Facebook ad copy, your landing page copy, because Facebook ad copy is very different than standard copy. We kind of have to flip the principles on their head. And then I just give you a ton of bonus content. So I've got information there on live video training, Facebook ads, all the things that you need to help get your messaging on point so that the people who need to find you will understand what you're about.
Okay. And now we're going to give people lots of ways to get in touch with you.
Okay.
When they're listening to this.
Okay, cool.
As we're recording this, you're not in launch mode, but when this comes out, you will be in the middle of a 5-day challenge. What is that challenge going to be about?
Yeah, so it's called the Click-Worthy Copy Challenge. Okay. And it is about making your copy click-worthy. Imagine that. And that is a copy tip. Like, just tell people what you're doing. We're gonna hit this framework, but I'm gonna go into much more detail. And we're going to walk you through some specific strategies that you can start building in. And I'm going to support you in that challenge. So I have actually a pop-up group that goes along with that challenge where I'm in there that whole week, like giving you direct and specific feedback on your own messaging. And it gets really involved, really fun, lots of activity. But yeah, it's all about teaching you how to craft messaging that speaks to your ideal clients.
Yeah. And so when this goes live, it's day 2 of the challenge. So if you're listening to it the day it came out, definitely do it. Again, this is a free challenge. And Anna is I'm not sure she has the link yet, but I'm going to set one up that's just at youronlinegenius.com/. And I'm just going to say Anna's group. And that'll get you there.
Amazing.
There. But also you have, if people are maybe a little bit late for this challenge, when is your program launching if they were interested in that?
Awesome. So our cart opens on April the 12th, which is a Friday, and it closes on April the 18th. This is 2019 when we're recording this. Yep. So if you happen to be listening during that week, you could go to saraannapowers.com/magnetic messaging. And Bobby, you can drop the link in the show notes. And we open only twice a year. And then we close because we launch at specific times so that we can, launching takes a lot of energy. We put our energy into launch, but then we have a very specific launch calendar and we close it. And then we're focused on serving our students inside the program.
Yep. Okay. And then if people just like you, which everyone should like you.
Oh, thanks.
but I mean, they don't need the program now, or they're listening to it during an off period. Where should they go to find you, to get in your world, to get on those emails so they can hear from you every week with your rigid flexibility?
Amazing. So that you can hear from me maybe on Monday, maybe on Wednesday. Who knows? Surprise. So my website is saraannapowers.com, and there's no H on the Sara. It looks kind of weird. 2 A's smushed together. saraannapowers.com. My Instagram is at saraannapowers. I love it when people DM me. I'm pretty active on stories. I do this pretty consistently, and I think they're super fun. And I have a free template. So it is actually one of the templates that is included in my full program, but it is something that I give away to support people and just give them a little taste of like the goodness that is inside the program. And you can find that at saraannapowers.com/stellar sales page.
Listeners, I hope you heard that. That is a template for your sales page, which I know is actually one of the biggest pain points that I hear entrepreneurs talk about. So you should definitely take her up on that and grab that. Sarah, this has been fantastic. I don't know why I called you Sarah.
Because I go by Sarah Anna Powers, and it's.
But you're Anna. I don't know why. You need to quit that. We need to get.
I know. Okay, so here's the back. This is the last thing to say. I know, but when I bought the website or bought the URL, AnnaPowers.com was taken by some photographer in Florida who doesn't look like she's doing a lot with the site, but I mean, I wish her love and light. But I thought, well, I went by my double name. You know, I'm a Mississippi girl. So I was Sarah Anna till I was like 5, and my parents thought it was too much for me to have to write on my school papers. So I got SarahAnnaPowers.com. Every mentor, Bobby, that I've had is like, what are you doing? It is so confusing. So my friends call me Anna, but that is why you call me Sarah. Because
no, I know you confuse me by saying it so many times. I'm like, no, you're Anna. I don't but Anna, it has been a pleasure to have you on, and you gave a ton of great value. So I want to thank you on behalf of my listeners.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a total blast and such a great way to wrap up the week. Okay, listeners, that's it for this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. We'll be back here next week with another episode. Talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.